people almost won't believe this until they look into it themselves, that the evidence from, I said science, but also from archaeology over and over and over points to the Bible as history, not as a collection of folk tales. Right. And I thought, you know what? You can't force someone to believe this, but I dare people to look at the evidence. I dare you to look at the evidence and you tell me what is your conclusion. There are so many stories like this in the Bible that you dismiss it. The favorite one, the one that made me write the book, literally.
We want to hear that one.
There are two stories, one from science and one from archaeology, but the archaeology, I was in Albuquerque, speaking at some church in Albuquerque, and somebody said, oh, you got to meet Dr. Stephen Collins. He's a biblical archaeologist. He's the guy who discovered biblical Sodom. And I said, excuse me, he did what? Sodom, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah is like the first couple of pages of the Bible. I would even doubt that it's possible for archaeologists to discover something that ancient, and it just seems like mythical, even though I believe it happened. You're telling me some archaeologists could find it? Well, I met Dr. Stephen Collins, and with skepticism, I looked into this because I thought, a lot of people say a lot of things, maybe they want it to be true. It is insane. And that was what, when I discovered that, when I discovered these things, the first thing is I'm amazed. Then I'm angry that I haven't heard this before. Because I said to myself, the evidence is all there. I'm not making it up. And this guy.
And what was the evidence? Like, what did he find that was so spectacular?
Basically, he knew. He was doing some tour in Israel, some bus tour to teach people about different sites. And they get down to the southern part of the Dead Sea, where other biblical scholars said, oh, we think Sodom and Gomorrah were down here. And he's thinking, you know what? The guys who said that are good guys, but they had to get this wrong, because what the Bible says is that Sodom and Gomorrah were part of the cities of the plain, which would be north of the Dead Sea, south of the Sea of Galilee. So he's like, I need to look into this. So he looks into it, and he finds a couple of sites up there that have never been excavated because of, Israel's war with, the Arab countries, whatever. There's always good reasons why you don't know something, right? So there's nobody doing archaeology there. So he finds one site, and I'm giving you the short version, and he starts digging down, as they do in archaeology. They're going layer by layer. When he comes to the level of whatever it would be, about 1750 BC, they can tell by the ceramics, the pottery, right? They know exactly where we are, okay? They find a layer of soot and ash, average depth of about 5 feet, that was completely inexplicable in scientific terms. Fire, earthquake, whatever. There was no explanation to find a layer of soot. They could smell the soot. This is 4,000-year-old soot that's never been uncovered, right? But then the freaky thing is, amidst this soot, 1750 BC, right, they found tiny bits of, they said it was like a Cuisinart why are they finding these tiny bits of melted brick? You ever try to melt a brick? You know what, you're talking like 5,000, 10,000 degrees, right? Melted brick, melted human bone, whatever. But the killer, they found a piece of pottery that this guy, who's this expert, knows, ceramic typologist. He goes, that's definitely 1750 BC. I can see it, right? But he goes, wait a minute, maybe I got it wrong, because there's a glaze on it. Glazing was not invented till like 700 AD. Uh-oh, we've got a problem. But he looks at it again and he goes, no, I know this is from 1750 BC. He knows the kind of jar it is and this and that. So they take it to a lab in New Mexico. What happened in New Mexico in the 40s? They were doing tests for, atom bomb tests, right? So the place where they used to do these tests with these atom bombs would create such heat of 30,000 degrees Fahrenheit, whatever it was, that it would melt the sand. So when they brought it into the technician and said, tell us what you find when you look at this in your incredible microscope, they said, oh yeah, it's a nice piece of trinitite, which is what they would call the stuff that they found in the deserts. And the guy goes, no, keep look at it, find a way. Well, what they discovered was the only way a piece of pottery from 1750 BC could have this glaze would be if it was exposed to 5,000, 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit for a couple of seconds. I mean, anyway, the details, there's all these details.
Fire and brimstone.
But this is when they start, now the killer, and again, this is science. Nature magazine, which is one of the premier peer-reviewed journals in the world of science wrote an article, came out literally like 2 years ago, where 21 scientists weigh in on all of this stuff. Wow. And their conclusions, they were so blown away by this that they said, well, they had to bring up in this article that it looks exactly like the biblical account of Sodom and Gomorrah. They're not saying they believe it happened, but they're saying that the details are so freakishly similar that they needed to mention it in the article. But what I find really interesting is that after the 1750 BC level, right? Because these cities are thousands of years old. So there was a city there 4000 BC, 3000 BC, 2000 BC. Then you get this event. For 1,000 years after this event, there is zero human civilization on that site. In other words, whatever happened there was such a nightmare.
It was so catastrophic.
That no one would dare ever settle there again because it was so horrifying.
Wow.
So archaeology is now proving that the first couple of pages of the Bible are like our history. I didn't expect to see that in my lifetime.
Hello, familia. Enjoying the content you just watched? Well, this is the perfect opportunity to click those like and subscribe buttons and then share with someone who needs a little pick-me-up today.